Next up, we have the home team, University of Washington, with Polly.
I'm Angelica.
And I'm Chloe.
And we are millennials. There are a lot of us. The millennial population currently exceeds that of the baby boomers by millions. And because of this, it would seem right that the millennials make up the majority of the American voting population. However, when you look at the 2012 presidential election, you see that we're not really showing up to vote. A lot of different age groups vote more than us. And when we look at even smaller elections, such as midterm elections, our turnout is even worse. And it's elections like these that are really problematic that we don't show up, because these elections are where change begins. Change begins when you vote consistently and constantly. So for young voters, it's important for us to not only show up during presidential elections, but also to show up during midterm elections, during state elections, and most importantly, during local elections. Change starts small, and time and again, we've seen this hold true in policy changes having to do with gay marriage, with climate change, and with minimum wage. Democracy is measured by the strength and voice of its citizens, and this voice must be heard more than once. Young people have to vote again and again and again. So with that, meet Polly.
What if there was an easy way to participate in politics? A space to ask questions, become informed, a reliable companion that you can ask anything.
How many debates are left before the election?
Who are my state district representatives?
And trust that it would have answers, big or small.
According to USA Today, Sanders is a top pick in the upcoming caucus.
So what is a caucus?
Great question, Joey.
It would help you get involved in politics that matter to you.
Don't forget, there's a town hall meeting this Thursday to discuss the new housing policy.
So how would that bill affect where we live?
And think about how those issues affect other people too.
Jake will still pay the taxes for the light rail, even though he lives 5 miles from the closest station.
Talking about politics with your friends has never been easier. Democracy is a conversation. If you can change the conversation, you can change everything. Be a part of it.
Now, Polly is a personalized political companion. She's a conversational user interface that empowers millennials to be informed and engaged in politics. Polly was not a product, rather a physical product. We created her with, she is a thoughtful concept and as well a necessary concept that we believe will change how millennials participate in democracy. In the past, command line interfaces and graphical user interfaces have required people to tell the computer what they want. Now with conversational user interfaces, the computer already knows what people want. And this is something really special because a good conversational user interface has all of the benefits of back-end computing, but also can act like a human. This makes them adaptable and invisible, and also a perfect candidate for a role as a political companion.
So when we looked into designing Polly, we had 3 main goals. We wanted to begin with understanding each user. And to fully understand a person, Polly works to foster a long-term relationship. The earpiece that you saw in the video is just one of the many devices that Polly is manifested in. She's designed to be a platform-agnostic system, so she can be everywhere. This enables her to collect information about your commute on the way home, what you do in your free time, or your existing political views. Additionally, Polly removes the legwork from getting involved in the political system. She's constantly working. Polly provides relevant information to you and tracks events and news that you are interested in. And finally, Polly really works to empower change. Many millennials feel there's a gap between your personal opinion and what you want and what actually happens, making change. A lot of millennials also think that in order to close this gap, it involves arguing with your crazy uncle about Donald Trump. We all have that uncle. But it turns out this is not the solution. Polly enables users to help find how they can actively be participants in politics. She helps them find local level, small participant actions like canvassing, or phone banks to get involved. When designing Polly, we also wanted to look into what she was not and make sure we were aware of her limitations. Polly is not a personal assistant. She is designed specifically to be a political companion, and she finds her limits within politics. Additionally, Polly is not opinionated. On a behavioral level, she's never going to tell you what to do. She's not going to tell you how to think. She's going to help you develop your own political opinion, may be challenging it at times, but ultimately always deferring back to you. In order to make people feel comfortable discussing politics with a computer, you need to have a level of trust. Many existing CUIs fit into these axes. These axes show a lot of qualities that many existing CUIs fall underneath. We can see through this range, many range from robot-like and serious, down to playful and human-like. Polly, however, exists in a unique space. Her serious tone mimics that of the political sphere, while her human-like conversational skills make her approachable and warm. Together, these qualities help foster a huge element of Polly's success, which is trust. It's hard to challenge someone's opinion if they don't trust you. Polly is designed to gain this trust through 3 stages of a very complex relationship. In phase 1, Polly is learning about you while you are learning about her. She shows you more top-level bits of information and gauges your response to learn more about your knowledge and your opinion. This is where she works to build the foundation of not only your political opinion, but your relationship with her as well. Once Polly gets a sense for what matters to you, she becomes more of a guide. She will start sharing relevant information to your lifestyle, like zoning changes in your neighborhood. You're still having conversations with Polly, but Polly has also prepped you to begin having informed political decisions outside of the system. Go to your town hall meeting and speak up. Polly makes the biggest impact on stage 3. By now, you and Polly have worked together to develop your fact-based political opinion. Your trust in Polly allows her to ask you some harder questions that might challenge the opinion that you know. Ultimately, you have learned to think critically, question your own opinion, and inform your own vote. Polly uses a specific content aggregation system to decide what she shares with you during these times. During the educational phase of our relationship, Polly works to ensure that all the information you're receiving is fact and data-based. This comes from nonpartisan sources such as C-SPAN, white papers, and Pew Research Center. This guarantees that you can first focus strictly on developing a fact-based political opinion. Once you have worked with Polly to develop the basis of your political voice, she expands her reach to include information from data-driven think tanks. By doing so, she is inevitably introducing a higher risk of bias. However, what makes Polly successful here is the transparency around sources. By informing you about where this information is coming from, she's making you wary of what biases you might encounter, teaching you how to deal with them, and introducing you to more contrasting opinions. In the most advanced phase of your relationship with Polly, you're receiving news, updates, and information from all political sources, partisan ones included. By now, with Polly's guidance, you know that Fox News and MSNBC should not be perceived as fact, but you also know that digesting them is an important part of understanding all sides of a political issue. They help you develop your opinions and your stance on politics. By this point, you are qualified to identify biases and be a highly aware media consumer. You can also probably even now have a polite, informed political discussion with your crazy uncle about Donald Trump. In a world with Polly, millennials see the potential they have to make change. This is by voting again and again and again. And we think the future of democracy is Polly. Thank you.
Thank you, UW. Let's go on to the judges' comments. Cliff?
Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit.
He was so excited.
So thank you guys for your presentation. It was really well done. Actually, the sort of polish and the clarity of the information presentation in your presentation actually reminded me a little bit of Lisa, actually, in her work. So one thing that I thought really got me right in the presentation is the declaration of the problem, right? A lot of times the student work, that's one of the most difficult things to actually articulate is what problem you're trying to solve. And when you put it like, there's this problem of continuous engagement, actually, that you had me right there. The thing that I wondered about, though, is like, what sort of what is the incentive for somebody to keep coming back to this product, to use it over and over again? Because some of what you describe already assumes somebody that's very much engaged in these issues, right? There's perhaps you're presenting a more frictionless way to engage with these issues, but at the same time, that also assumes that somebody's already engaged. And so I wonder if you guys thought about what brings a new person to this product that wouldn't otherwise be engaged in these issues.
Yeah, we definitely think that sort of the millennial target fits best into working with like exciting new technology. You know, there's some sort of Pokemon Go component that it's new and it's there, that you want to interact with it. And I think that sort of the long-term maintaining that relationship is sort of when we talk about the perks of the long-term relationship and embedding Polly into it, is her just understanding you better. And I know that's sort of a hope and a wishful dream that a CUI fully understands you, but it's sort of those details of the long-term relationship that, you know, she picks up on. You don't really want to talk on your commute ride home, but when you're making breakfast in the morning, you are want to be engaged. And hopefully by this time, she's giving you enough information that you feel like your voice is being heard and you want to continue interacting with her and engaging with the politics.
I love this project, and of course have a particular interest in it. Mm-hmm. And I agree with Cliff. Just the framing of the problem was really, you know, a huge part of what I think is so successful about this. And I think that what I saw of the technology was something in people's ears. Is that?
It was one way that she was realized.
One way. I mean, what's cool about this project is that you could. I mean, this technology, this information is available to millennials now. I like that it has a place in space. It has it's sort of defined as a thing that is working constantly to engage you, which is such a huge part of the problem. I mean, and for the example of the caucus, like. To explain a caucus, I mean, it's its own sort of challenge. The examples were really well done. I also love the way you described the spectrum of liberal to conservative and the sources. So again, just the idea of making a place for this thing, sticking it in your ear or wherever, you know, and encouraging millennials to think about this, you know, before the election sort of springs up on us, I think is a great contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think there's this deep challenge, right? It's about developing critical thinking. And especially in some sense, if you look around right now, I worry about so-called information technologies. You might question how informed we are, whether we're better or worse informed. And the question is, I really like the notion, you could just get a job in copywriting, by the way. Forget design. In terms of this, democracy is a conversation. If you change the conversation, you can change everything. That's a very mature way to articulate things. And so the notion that it's not about the technology, but it's about the nature of the conversation and how you interact with it, and that's a feature of design, and how you design it can change the biases which can provoke the types of conversations, and they reflect a certain value. And so what I find interesting throughout your work is the underlying values that are reflected by it, that you've never really called out, but they're obvious based in how you chose it. And I think that's the part that we don't tend to talk about or even try to teach. And so I really appreciated it in your how you presented it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so with you on this project. It's awesome. Love where you're coming from. I think there's two things I wanted to say. One was it's amazing when you talk about conversational UI and the future of UI and where we're going, how formless your presentation is in terms of there is no thing we're talking about. You're describing it very, very beautifully and very articulately, but there is no artifact, right? There's nothing there, and that's actually one of these sort of it may take the form of something in your ear, it may not. It may be in many different places and many different experiences, and I think that's also commendable in terms of your the advancedness of your thinking. The second thing I wanted to point out was I'm with you on, you know, the benefit to society here is clear and the benefit to the individual is clear. Is there a business? Or is this a government thing?
We've talked about it. I mean, in some ways, it's like the ultimate campaign manager, right? That it like gets people talking about your stuff in the way that, in Obama's election or Clinton's election, that language is way more accessible. And so sort of like bringing that language to people in a much more streamlined way. It's not something we've thought deeply about, but it's definitely been on our radar a little bit.
Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, UW.